from startup to grown-up. That is what we're going to be talking about today. And over the last, nearly 15 years actually, I've been helping firms navigate that grow into the scale, get through those difficult teenage years. Now, over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to tell you stories. They are all real. They may be anonymized to protect the innocent, but they are all real stories. And I'm hoping that you can take from a story that nugget, that moment that's going to spark your journey from startup to grown-up. Now, before I start, I just want to see if any of you can relate to any of these. Can you remember when that team member left? Yeah, you can do, can't you? And did it feel like you've just been dumped by your gorgeous teenage crush? And it was always the gorgeous ones that dumped you, wasn't it? We can relate to that one, can't we? Does it feel like sometimes your staff are putting their hand up, a bit like, that teenager going, "Can I be bothered?" When you ask them, "Will you please just update the practice management system?" Yeah, I can see a lot of smiles there. And can you picture this? There's a group of teenagers in a room. You put a bowl of crisps in front of them, you put a bowl of sweets in front of them, and they almost inhale them, don't they? And doesn't that feel a bit like your business inhaling cash? And you're like, where's it gone to? What's happened to it? And how quickly do they get through it? Now you see it, now you don't. And there are times, and I've got a family, but I'm sure most of us can relate to it. You walk down the stairs, you see the kitchen light still on, the curtains still drawn, they've left the house, and how many times have you asked your family, whether it's your other half or your teenagers, to do this stuff before they leave the house? But they just don't listen, do they? In fact, I think my husband's the worst. Just don't listen. And does any of this remind you of your business right now? That business that's a teenager, that's difficult, awkward, and expensive. And what we have when we're trying to scale up our business is we've grown a teenager. I can see you nodding there. It's very true, isn't it? You think everything's fine, and then the latest drama hits, doesn't it? Yeah, you can relate to that one. And our business is a teenager. So how are we going to get our business to be an adult? How are we going to get it to be a grown-up? Through working with many, many firms over the years, I know that there are 11 categories that you need to attend to if your business is ever going to grow up. If you're ever going to have that crisis-free business that allows you to do what you want to do without spending loads and loads of time. So I can't go through each of those 11 categories, but what I am going to do is take you through a few of them. So let me start with actually a bit of my own story, and nothing to do with growing a business, but it was a very powerful experience. In May 2023, I got a new title. Councillor Heather Townsend entered the room. I think a lot of you are sitting here going, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to take a perfectly sensible, running a business, doing reasonably well at it, and then become a politician? There isn't a week that doesn't go by where I don't think, why was I so stupid? Why? And if I'm going to answer that question, I need to go back to a moment in 2018. So imagine you've got a beautiful area in your location. A beautiful area, it's in the green belt, and then a developer decides to put 190 houses, or should I say an application in for 190 houses. And this was the development that was going to happen. It was the worst kind of development. It broke nearly every relevant planning permission, well, planning policy that Central Bedfordshire had. In fact, if you could visualise the map, you would see 2 entrances and exits. And these were poor, small, residential streets that were not designed for the extra 200 car movements that this development would bring. What you would also see was that this development was 2 streets behind my house. Oh. So I decided to fight this development. I joined in the fight because, after all, I wanted to keep a safe neighbourhood, but what really mattered for me, what really mattered for me, was preserving the legacy for future generations, keeping the environment and keeping it green and leafy. And yeah, we managed to turn that down. Joined the fight, but it triggered something in me. So when in 2022, another development came up in the town, sadly this one was already ticked through by the planners, I joined the fight. 1,384 objections later, the developers stepped back to rethink what they were doing. Now, I was faced with a stark choice back then. Did I believe that the previous ward councillors were going to fight hard to stop this development? Did I believe that the previous administration had enough guts to listen to what residents really wanted? So I took that choice. I took the choice to preserve the environment, to fight the developers, to put my time where my mouth was. And that was why I stood. And it's still why I do what I do there. And you might be thinking, that's a lovely story, Heather, but what's this got to do with helping my business become a grown-up? One of the key things that you need to do, and that first bit that I always talk about, and many of you would have had that conversation with me, is what is your why? You know, self-leadership is so important. We've got to make sure that what we're growing is aligned to what we want. If we don't, we'll be stuck with that teenager, difficult, awkward, expensive. And so I was working with two owners of a business. We spent 10 minutes talking about what they really wanted. And they spent those 10 minutes talking about how important it was to be with their family, that they were building something to be with their family. That was what it was about for them. I thought, that's great. I know what your why is. I know that self-leadership. I know why you're doing what you're doing. And then so we turned on to marketing, and I said, right, what clients do you want? And they said, the big ones. All right, okay. I said, well, what do you mean by big? And they said, the really big ones. Oh. I said, and they said, yeah, that we want them to have the portfolio FD, they want the outsourced bookkeeping department, all of that. I said, that's great. I said, okay. And then I asked that awkward question. Who in your team's going to do this? And they said, oh, that'll be us. I said, well, look, if you go for this strategy, do you think that's going to help you or hinder you spending time with your family? And they went, it's going to be a lot harder, isn't it? Because we can't afford to bring in that portfolio FD type person right now. It's so true, isn't it? And I said, so what's prompted you to want to work with these bigger businesses? And they said, well, we're not really sure, but we hear that that's where the money is. We hear that's where the profit is. I said, is that what you want? No, they said. I said, is your ego involved in this decision? I might not answer that one for you now, but we've all been there, haven't we? We've all been there. And when you start to build your business, a number of things will happen. The first thing is everyone will have an agenda for you, won't they? You need to work with this client. Do you? You need to be doing that. Do you? You need to have an office here. Do you? You need to outsource. Do you? Everyone will have an agenda for you. And sometimes that agenda doesn't match why we started our business. What was it that drove us to work the long hours? What was it that caused us to leave that safe paycheck every month for this thing called entrepreneurship, or I call torture? What was it about? So my first thing about this key thing about self-leadership, if you're going to take your business from that teenager stage, that difficult, awkward, expensive, and scale it, you've got to make sure that you're scaling something that matches what you're there to do and what drives you forward. But why is that important? I'm going to go back a little bit to my story. So I've now been elected Councillor Heather Townsend. It's good, isn't it? And this is kind of embarrassing, and don't really know how to say this because I'm talking to you about how to scale a business. In October 2023, 3 of my 5 fee earners on the same day decided to resign. Bang, bang, bang! It felt like a knife in my chest. What had I done? Why did they reject me? What were we doing? Just a month earlier, it felt like we were all on the right path. I had to literally rebuild my business. Now, some of you in the room will know that. Rebuild my business, restructure it. I had to fight every single day for 6 weeks to work out what it was going to be. And I got to the 1st of December, and I have to say, I was frankly exhausted. I was at my lowest ebb. I just wanted to creep into Christmas and really just lick my wounds. But then a developer on the 1st of December had other ideas. You remember that first planning application, the one that got me into being a politician? It came back again. And suddenly I found that energy to fight, to coordinate residents, to get a leaflet out. Remember, I was at my lowest ebb a moment ago, and we got it turned down. But when you're really true to your purpose, when you're building something that matters, it's going to take you through these difficult parts. It's going to give you that motivation to carry on. You know, I'm human. That day I spoke with trusted people and I was given the question, do you want to carry on? And I said, yes. I said, yeah, I could give up now, but I know in 6 months' time I'll regret it because I've moved away from my why. So that first bit about taking your business to being that grown-up from being a teenager is that self-leadership. I've looked at one aspect, but it all starts with being aligned to what you're building and your why. That will get you through the tough stuff. That will get you through the times that you've got to go out of your comfort zone, where you've got to fight and move things forward. So with your permission, I'd like to move on to the second key category. Can you imagine looking at your practice management system in August? And you download it, as we all do, into a spreadsheet. We get our highlighters out, because we all do, don't we? There are special colours, I imagine, for each particular type. And we get a lot of pleasure in that spreadsheet. But can you imagine getting that spreadsheet and just seeing the rows just carry on and carry on and carry on and carry on, to the point where you realise that you've got 5 months of work and you don't have the people to do that. And that's 5 months extra work to do. This is exactly what happened to Michael. And you can go on to the Accountants Growth Club, you can hear his story. This is a real person. Michael, he literally had 5 months extra work and not the staff to deliver it. And I said, Michael, how did this go wrong? And he said, well, we'd been winning clients, but we'd been forgetting to put their tax returns on our list of things to do. You know, it's a simple thing, but it can happen to the best of us, particularly when we're growing quickly. What happens when we're growing quickly? Our business is a teenager. It's difficult. It's awkward. It doesn't always work as it should do. And I'd been saying to Michael, right through this period of growth, I said, Michael, have you got a plan for these 20-odd clients you're winning a month? He said, yes, Heather. I said, is it written down? He said, no, Heather, it's up here. Yeah, I can hear a few people in the room. That isn't a plan when it's up there. I know a number of you have had that conversation with me. We often think we have a plan because we've got an intention. We know kind of where we want to go, but what we're often doing is what Michael was doing. We're looking at the next week, we're looking at the next month. We don't project far enough. We don't see enough into the future. And as a result, things catch us out. And I'll say this, a plan can be written down, but it's still not a plan. For it to be a plan, it's got to have actions. It's got to have actions that are translated into your diary. It's got to be reviewed regularly and then changed based on what's happening. Now, what would I say are the right plans to have? First and foremost, you want your short, mid-term growth plan. So what have I got to achieve in the next 12 weeks? And what have I got to achieve in the next 3 years? But a real focus on that first 12 weeks. Then there's the capacity plan. Actually, in the next 12 to 18 months, with the growth that we're on, when am I going to need to hire? When am I going to maybe need to expand my premises? When am I going to need to open an office if I'm going to hit my growth plans? And then the final one is that 12-week deep dive operational plan. And if you've got these plans and they're driving action and they're reviewed regularly, you're not going to get caught out like Michael. By the way, he managed to find temporary staff and he delivered it without missing a deadline. But if you ask Michael now, he will tell you that every week they look at those plans. Literally every week. I'm going to move on to another story, and this one's a true one. Some of you may have heard it. But imagine waking up and realising you've just lost your house and you've just lost your entire client base in your business. In fact, you've got restrictions around you that you cannot practice within a certain area. But let's remain positive. Your family have stuck with you. This is exactly what happened to Paul. And let's circle back to how did Paul get to that time? So Paul had been growing his practice. He was brilliant at winning work. He was brilliant at servicing work. He loved that stuff. As a result, he was good at it. So he fairly quickly got up to a 250k turnover. But then he kept bumping up against that and he couldn't seem to get over it. And it would be 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. It's the teenager thing, isn't it, again? Doesn't it often feel like that you tell them once, can you empty the dishwasher, please? Guess who left the house this morning without her son emptying the dishwasher? That'll be me. How many times we told him? But it can feel like that. Absolutely feel like that when your business is a teenager. And Paul got tired of bumping up against that 300 plateau. So he decided, and I often hear this, if I'm bigger, I'm going to sort this problem out. So he merged with another local practice. And as I think you'll probably realised, let's, accelerate 2 years. This was not a match made in heaven. It was a very acrimonious exit, and he lost everything. But we're resilient as a lot, aren't we? So he started up again, and he got to that 250, and he started bumping up against that bit. And he sought out my help. And I explained to him, I said, Paul, you're great at winning work, servicing work, but if you're going to scale, if you're going to take your business out of this teenager, you need to build a team beneath you. There are key processes in your business that you now need to take ownership of. You have to be a grown-up with these processes. And these are the ones, you've got to create it. How am I going to generate the lead? Someone put up my hand saying, I want to work with you. How am I then going to convert it? I.e., what am I actually going to do to get that to be a signed invoice with money in the bank? Thirdly, how am I going to deliver that both through my workflows, but also how am I going to deliver that through the people? What we often do is we get so sucked in to enjoying the client work that we miss those bits. Because we think that other people will do it and work to our standards, but they never do they? Never do. And then you've got to get paid for it. And when you started your business, you never thought you'd miss an invoice, did you? That was just an anathema. It was never going to happen. And now you're like, oh, that didn't get invoiced. It happens. We're all smiling to ourselves. So, and then final thing is cultivate it. How am I going to get more out of my existing stuff? And if you're going to take your business into that grown-up phase, you've got to realise that you now have ownership of all those processes. You may not have to do them, but you've got to make sure somebody else does them. And as your firm grows, your role will change. The 0 to 50,000 is all about, can I win work and service it? 50 to 250 is, can I bring in a team to take the load off me? 250 to 500,000 is, how can I get the team to release me from being the business and in the center of everything? And then 500,000 above is all about, how can I step away from the business and it run without me? So how do I put the accelerator on? And have you realized that your role will change, will absolutely change? And this is that key category. If you've not realized that your role and your mindset needs to change as your business grows, you'll be stuck with that teenager. Difficult, awkward, expensive. So we've moved from planning. We've looked at changing role and mindset, and we've looked at self-leadership. And I'm going to tell you a story, and I have changed the name, but I know somebody might recognise this person. So can you imagine spending £1,000 a month on marketing and not get any reward back for it? Or what felt like no reward? Can you imagine doing that? The first thing you're going to do is talk to your coach, isn't it? And go, what am I doing? You said if I followed this, this would work. So of course, I said, look, get out your sales inquiry report. That came out. They looked at it. I looked at it. And I said, I thought you weren't winning any business. What's happening with these leads? And the face fell. We got a bit busy. Didn't manage to get them in the diary, didn't get them followed up. They just disappeared. And I said, right, okay, we have to optimize our workflows. This is one of those key categories. So the director's PA came in. She became the person that fielded the first lead, so they didn't get missing at that point. She also made sure that the director sat down and talked about what needed to push forward for new business. In February, they set a target of winning £500 of monthly recurring work. In that month, they hit it. In March, they set a target of winning £1,000 of monthly recurring work. They hit it. In April, they set the target of winning £1,500 of monthly recurring work. They hit it. And that all came from optimizing their workflows. It was the sales process. Now, you might think, who would get the sales process wrong? But stuff breaks in businesses. And by the way, I've had that conversation many, many times in the last 6 months. You'll be surprised how many of us go, we're going to put a whole lot of money into our marketing, but then not actually make sure we're following up the leads that come through. The worst I ever heard was a very, very well-known accountancy firm who is owned by a very, very prominent member of the profession. They literally burnt through £150,000 of AdWords spend because they'd not trained their team to take the leads coming through. Literally, it was 150 grand. This is a really easy trick, but it might not be your sales process is broken. But stuff breaks in a small business, particularly when it's trying to scale, because we're busy. And we've got a teenager. Remember, difficult, awkward, expensive. But they're still our baby, aren't they? So, stuff breaks all the time. But when stuff breaks, the first thing you want to do is the data. The problem that we often have is we don't have the data. At least in this chance, we had the sales report. We knew what was coming in and when it was coming in. But very often we don't have that data. Or we don't have the time to look at it. So what we actually do is we take our best guess, don't we? And that best guess isn't always right. Because remember, I was told we had a marketing problem. We had a sales problem. And this is often part of the reason we get stuck in that perpetual teenager struggling to scale, but being stuck with that difficult, awkward, expensive business. So it's really important that you optimize your workflows, and it's something that we always look to do. Let's look at the next category that I really wanted to highlight. Imagine that 150,000 of your ideal clients saw your profile and your firm in a 3-week period. Anybody else thinking Nirvana? Bring it on. Can I have a little bit of it? Overload. Of course, it can be overload as well. Yeah, 150,000 seeing my little business. We've got it. Just because people see your business doesn't mean to say it's actually going to convert to business. And how does a Facebook group get me elected to Central Bedfordshire Council. It's a platform, a Facebook group. It's a platform to get noticed. It's a platform to get known. But it's a platform to get known for. And so I've built a group for Flitwick residents over the last 6 years that's become known for one thing, being the best place to find out what's happening, to get heard, to get listened to. So we've got rid of all the businesses that advertise from that group. We've got rid of all the people going, can you recommend a plumber, please? Because they just filled the group. We couldn't stick to our purpose. If you look at what I do as a counsellor, you will not see me spending a lot of time delivering leaflets, even though I'm told to. You will not see me spending a lot of time doing Instagram, even though I'm told to. You will not see me spending a lot of time in the council chamber because I'm told to. You could say I'm contrary or don't listen. But too often we're told in our marketing we have to do this, we have to do that, and we get spread far too thinly. So the key thing is about being known for something is really commit to a platform. That could be Instagram, it could be Facebook, it could be TikTok, it could be LinkedIn, it could be a networking group, it could be something. But as long as you commit to a process to get known for something. But the problem is we're often not confident with our marketing. Nobody taught us this stuff, do they? They don't teach us this stuff. So we either carrying on do what we've always done, or we do what we think we've got to do, which is often, we've got to go networking, haven't we? Because we're told to that. If you want to win work, you go out networking. And this happened to Hazel. She'd set up a business and she wanted to be the outsourced finance department. That was her thing. And that was what she'd set up to do. But she'd got to that difficult scale point where she needed to bring in people, and to do that, she needed more business to pay them. So she's like, right, I've got to take a step change in my marketing. So she went and joined 2 local business networking groups. Hey, not a problem. However, these local business groups had tiny, tiny, tiny businesses in. They were the hey, I'm a marketing consultant. By the way, they're great. No offence to marketing consultants. There was a multi-level marketing person there, utilities warehouse, forever living products, whatever. They were there too. And because Hazel was good, she started to get some leads from that group. But who you hang around with is who you become. So those people that Hazel was hanging around with sent her more people like them, those tiny, tiny businesses. And because Hazel was desperate to bring in new work, she took on that I don't want to pay more than £100 a month type businesses because she needed the cash to afford the team member. And then before she knew it, she had a good 20% of her business, these tiny, tiny businesses that did not connect with who she wanted to be. She didn't want to be the tiny, tiny businesses. But she thought, look, I'm winning work here, let's go with it. So she put those messages on her website. So suddenly her website, instead of saying we're the outsourced finance department, said we work with small businesses, start-up businesses, established businesses, growing businesses. Have I missed out any? Oh, I've missed out charities, partnerships, but she didn't do that. But it's all very well because she's got something, hasn't she? She hadn't. She'd moved well away from it. And I see that sort of thing happening with Hazel all the time. And we do it because we're not confident, we do it because we're not measuring and monitoring it, and we do it because we're busy and haven't got time to think. If you're going to get your business to that stage where it's truly grown up, you've got to be known for something. So what is the audience you're going to commit to? Let's not do a Hazel. What's the audience you're going to commit to? What's the platform you're going to commit to making sure that you've got the visibility that you're seen out there? I've got one more story to tell you and then I'm going to close up. It's COVID. Do we remember COVID? It was pretty scary time. From a personal health and a business health point of view. People were telling us, oh, you're going to lose 20%, 30%, maybe your whole business. This is a story about Paul, another Paul. It's on my website. You can see it. And Paul had been doing all right, but as COVID started to tick in, his leads went down. And then he got to August 2022 and he had no new leads. He turned around to me and said, Heather, we can't have this. If I'm going to hit my goals, if I'm going to deliver that business, I need to move forward. So I said to him, I said, Paul, what are you doing with the people that really love you? He said, well, A, I'm not going to say what I do with my wife, and B, I think my kid's a bit young for this sort of stuff. Glad you got the joke. I said, no, the clients that love you. Oh, right, okay. He said, well, I deliver a great service. I said, well, you need more than this. I said, how are you staying in touch with them when I deliver a great service? So I said, no, we need to turn on the internal marketing engine, account management. So the first thing he did is, I said, let's get an easy win. I said, who's on your ditch list? We all have this ditch list, don't we? Sometimes it's a real one. Sometimes it's an intended one. Sometimes it's just wishful thinking. And I said, how many of those 5 people on your ditch list, if you delivered a service that they paid for properly at a right level, would suddenly become a good client? He said, most of them. I said, right, ring them up, have that conversation. 4 out of 5 stayed at a higher package. That first month, the result of that action, he generated 10 grand of annual recurring new business. So buoyed on by this, I said, right, we need some regular content. I said, you really want some interesting regular content out to them every week. He said, I can't do that. I'll do it every fortnight. Bit of an awkward one, that one. But he did. Paul's tough talking tips went out every fortnight, and he realised that people were ringing him up based on that, saying, what should I do, Paul? And he realised that every time someone rang him up, he seemed to come away with work. So he started instigating on a Friday, ringing up his best clients. He knew that that would be the point where they would be around and free and available. And he said, it's amazing. He said, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. Every time I ring a couple, a few will go, oh, Paul, can you just help you with? Or, Paul, I know these people. That became his marketing plan. He ditched social media. He's got one small ad in a newspaper. That was it. And every month he generates between 5 and 10K of annual recurring business each month. It would be much more, but for the fact he's choosy at the moment. Literally choosy. Now, I've told you a number of stories. What can I do to summarise to go from startup to grown-up? How do we get your business to scale and get out of that awkward teenage stage? I could give you all of those 11 categories. I'm not going to go to. I could give you a pen portrait of those stories. I'm not going to go to. I need to give you some hard facts. Nobody's going to come and save you. If you want your business to get out of teenager, you've got to be the grown-up. You've got to take ownership for those processes, for building that team, for changing your mindset. If you don't do that, you'll be stuck with that perpetual teenager. Difficult, expensive, awkward. So my lasting thought with you, you're all here because you want to scale your business. Your intention needs to match your attention. Thank you very much.